Hello everyone, this will be I'll Break Another Fall with Fragile Arms, written by Queen of All Hell and read by Insect Overlord. This fic is part of the Drive Home Is Long, I Hope I'll Make It series, and is a Batman fanfic. It is not rated, and the creator chose not to use archive warnings. It sits at just about 4,000 words. Here's the summary. It's been a long night, and Tim is not having a good time. Dick is a good big brother and learns something about Tim. It's been a long, arduous night of patrolling the streets of Gotham City, and the Batcave is filled with sounds of uniforms being unzipped, the hard soles of boots hitting the floor, and utility belts unclipping. Tim is blessedly tucked away at one of the benches farther from the others. At least, mostly out of any direct eye line, thanks to the lockers and various equipment cases. It's been who knows how long since he dragged himself into the cave from the streets, and in that time, he's only managed to remove his gloves and his domino. Everyone else present for the night shift is almost done de-gearing, and prepares to head towards the showers. They're probably ready to climb into their respective beds and sleep all morning like the nocturnal creatures they are. Meanwhile, tucked away in his corner, every square inch of Tim's skin feels like it's too tight around his body, clinging uncomfortably to the flesh and sinew beneath it. His thoughts are moving so fast and are so disjointed he feels like he couldn't make a coherent sentence to save his life. Even his muscles are like coiled springs ready to pop. He's tenser now than in the seconds after an ambush. He can feel every nerve in his body edging him onto the path of a complete and utter meltdown. Deep breaths. In, out. Fill the lungs all the way until it feels like they're about to burst. Then release it all. In, out. Again. It's not helping. Tim knows he has to take off the rest of his costume. He wants to do it. He really does. The routine of taking everything off in the same order every single night is comforting. Knowing that it's one thing he can always predict amid the chaos of Gotham, and the Wayne family feels like having a security blanket wrapped around his shoulders. But his hands won't move, apart from the almost imperceptible tremors, that is. He can't get his fingers to so much as lift from their place atop his rigid knees. The knuckles long gone white from the grip, blood drained away from his fingertips, and the pressure is probably leaving sizable imprints around his knees. Tim takes another pointless breath and tries to focus all his thoughts on moving a single hand from where it sits. His body just won't listen. It won't do what he wants, no matter how hard he tries. He can feel his breath quickening, can feel the need to do something, anything, pouring through him. He knows it's bad, knows he shouldn't, but the noise claws its way out of his throat. Without the permission of his mind, his vocal cords jolt into action. The vibrations of the tuneless humming rattle around in his skull, but it's not enough. He can't drown out everything. There are still so many sounds all at once. Dick's off-key singing in the showers, Bruce's tapping at the keys of the Bat computer, and Jason's cleaning of his guns at the workbenches. The humming is only soothing the barest of the ragged edges of his mind, but he knows he shouldn't have to do that. It's not right. It's wrong, wrong, wrong. He is wrong, wrong, wrong. He tries his best to quell the noises, to be good and quiet like his parents always wanted. Finally, his hands move from their statuesque position. Short nails dig into the flesh of his palms as his hands curl unconsciously into fists. Then, Tim's dismay and embarrassment continues. Those fists involuntarily begin to pound a harsh rhythm into the tops of his thighs. Once again, his stupid, weak body fails him. Why can't he just stop? Why can't he just take off his effing uniform? He does it every other gosh dang night, just like everyone else. The others have already disappeared to the shower stalls or wherever else, and he can't even make his stupid hand stop hitting his legs like a stupid child having a tantrum on the playground. He was supposed to be better, was supposed to be a crime-fighting vigilante for goodness sake. Not to mention the amount of money his parents had sunk into various therapies, programs, and tutors was supposed to have fixed him. He wasn't supposed to be like this. It's all still too much. The humming starts again because of course. His body must betray him further. His hands don't stop. They just keep repeating their violent, unforgiving strikes until Tim can't feel pain anymore. Even the residual tingling from the nerves in his muscles is gone. The humming persists, the hitting persists, and suddenly he's leaning so far forward on the cold metal bench that his knees hit the cold stone floor of the cave. He's jarred more by the surprise of the fall than even the resounding thunk of his knee pads on the floor. Tim immediately tries to scramble his way back into a sitting position, but all he accomplishes is knocking the back of his head against the metal bench when he tries to sit back on his heels. The force makes his teeth clack together, and now there's a metallic ringing in his head that's all too much to deal with on top of everything. He feels like a failure, like he's broken and beyond repair because he just can't take off his costume like everyone else. It's so simple, and he just can't do it. Now he's banging his head against the edge of the bench, again and again. The loud ringing it makes every time is bad, but the split second of blissful, whited-out emptiness from the impact is the only thing that makes his brain just stop. His thoughts come to a halt, and for that fraction of a second, just after impact, Tim can breathe again. Can forget his mantra, bad, broken, be quiet, wrong, ruined, bad, broken. From the other side of the benches and locker stalls comes the sound of hurried feet, bare against the cold stone floor. Tim is too caught up in the temporary solution to the overwhelmingness of his body, of his own existence. He doesn't realize his hands have come to grip at the roots of his hair, until someone else's hands are on his shoulders and he's trying to push them away. The touch feels like a burn. It's hot and cold and stinging despite the gentleness. It all feels like wretched, biting pain. Tim's ears are ringing, and he can't get his head to focus on anything except, go away, go away, go away. The extra hands are gone as quickly as they appeared. Tim isn't sure how long they're gone, or why they went away, and doesn't really care as long as they're not on him. So long as he can continue the contact between his skull and the bench. Eventually, the hands do return. They place what feels like a folded towel along the edge of the bench, which brings an end to his relief. Tim inadvertently lets out a mournful whimper and searches desperately for some action that will grant him the same release. Nails scrambling to find any bare skin now. The hands return a second time, however. They deposit not only a set of the earphones they used when testing newer, louder gadgets, but also wrap him in soft, heavy blanket that smells so completely like home. It takes several breaths, a few minutes worth on the outside, but what feels like a century for Tim, before he melts into the comforting weight. He makes quick work of fisting his strained hands into the material and burying his nose in it. Dick. The blanket smells like his brother, Dick. It's the one the eldest son uses to help him sleep when he has a nightmare, and it feels like there's electricity beneath his skin. It must have been Dick who tried to touch him earlier. Thankfully, that effort had ceased. Tim's vision still can't quite focus on anything in front of him, and his voice is still locked away somewhere, nestled deep inside his throat, where he isn't able to reach it. So, he lets out a strained noise that hopefully conveys the message he has. You can touch me now, but only if it's necessary. Dick seems to catch at least some of the other boy's meaning, and slides his big, calloused hands against the sides of his brother's head. With far more gentleness and care than Tim thinks he warrants, Dick rotates his head from side to side in a well-practiced motion, looking for any potential injuries. Apart from the swelling and the beginnings of a bruise from the bench, that will probably resolve in a few weeks, Tim looks fine. There's another shadow approaching, and Tim can feel another noise coming up out of him. This one a twisted mix between a pitiful whimper and the earlier humming. It conveys the same amount of dread with an equal measure of primal yearning for comfort. Before either of them can think too much of it, Dick's hands slide down the sides of his head until one is firmly covering the back of Tim's neck, and the other wraps around his younger brother's shoulders just enough so he can pull him into his chest. Dick's ratty old Superman t-shirt is damp at the collar from where he'd neglected to dry his hair after his earlier shower, and getting more so from the trickle of tears Tim had not noticed leaking from his own eyes. It's okay, though, because Dick is whispering low in his ear. Not soft like a whisper, but quieter by a considerable amount than his normally excited voice, and dampened by the headphones. He's telling Tim that it's okay, that he's here and no one will hurt him or touch him if he doesn't want them to. Not all of the words quite register in his mind or through the barrier, but the tone is enough of a comfort in itself. The approaching shadows draw closer, now more of a dark, brooding figure crouched just past Dick's right shoulder. Tim knows that it's more than likely Bruce. He can't help but nestle his eyes closer to the side of Dick's neck, so he won't have to see that familiar look of disappointment. He feels awash with shame. Bruce will think he's out of control, over-emotional and weak, broken, just like his parents thought. He'll take the suit and send Tim on his way once again, just another orphan out there trying to survive. "What's wrong, baby bird?" Dick pats the top of Tim's head. "You have to tell me, or I can't fix it." Dick sounded desperate for any answer he could get now. "Did somebody hurt you? I didn't see it happen, but—" Tim shuts down his tirade with a minute shake of his head. Tim tries to open his mouth, tries to speak, but the only thing that comes out is a breathless croak. The air can't even choke its way out of his lungs enough to form a half-hearted syllable. He clenches his jaw and tries to pull away from his brother's body enough to sign, but his body just doesn't have the energy anymore. Everything he'd left had been diverted to what his body thought to be survival, to trying to make sense of its own inability to initiate a task and then to regulate the overwhelming sensory information around him. Instead, he slumps back into Dick's chest and shifts to release the blanket from his vice grip. He wraps his arms around Dick's body and begins to sign behind his back. Can't take it off. Won't happen. Failed. Everything is too big, is what Tim finally lands on. He's forgetting the specific motion for too much, but it's close enough that someone might catch the meaning. The brooding figure passed Dick's shoulder and moves somewhere behind Tim, out of his line of sight. It makes the hairs on the back of his neck prickle despite his brother's warm hand. There's a long few beats of stillness before anything else happens. It takes a moment for Tim to realize that Dick can't actually see his hands. Just as he's considering trying once again to speak, or move away to sign again despite his body's many protests, is the moment his brother shifts and inhales deeply. Dick presses his nose against the crown of Tim's head and speaks in that low tone again. "You don't have to. We'll take you to your room. You can tell me more about what's wrong later, baby bird." The words are more of a rumble than any kind of noise with the headphones on, the vibrations of Dick's chest soothing against Tim's cheek. With that, Dick starts shifting Tim's weight around enough so that he can lift him as if he were a young child they'd found on the streets in desperate need of food and shelter from a storm. and Tim is too exhausted to resist by now. He simply allows Dick to haul him all the way upstairs into the manor, as if he isn't almost a fully grown adult, with a job and responsibilities currently wrapped in a blanket burrito. Bruce's dark figure hovers through the whole journey, standing stoically beside the two, far enough away that he isn't breathing down their backs, but close enough that his presence is obvious. Finally, they reach Tim's room, where Dick carefully unlatches his brother, just enough to lay him on the bed. Bruce stands just outside the partly open door, observing quietly from the other side. Meanwhile, Dick settles against the edge of the mattress, tucking the side of the weighted blanket around Tim's body so he's snug and able to benefit from the extra pressure. "Tell me what happened," Dick says and signs at the same time. The heartbroken look in his eyes already tells him that Dick thinks he did something, or perhaps even failed to do something that made this happen to Tim. After several heartbeats, Tim finally signs again. "Broken," he says, hands moving aggressively through the motion. "Couldn't undress. I wanted to, but couldn't." His eyes dart towards the corner of the dark blue blanket. "The change was bad. Clothes had to stay the same." Tim's hands shake as he tries to force down the sharp lump in his throat and the stinging once more assaulting his eyes. "I'm broken. I'm wrong. I'm not what you think. I'm bad and I'll always be bad like this," he finishes, hoping the shaking of his hands isn't so obvious. Dick has a look of utter horror on his face. He just stares at Tim for a few moments. His big, dark eyes are impossibly deep and full of emotion that Tim couldn't identify even if he wanted to. Finally, Tim's hands move again. "I'm sorry," he signs frantically against his own chest, a sour kind of panic rising in his throat as he curls inward. "I'm sorry, please, I promise I'll be good. Be quiet." His eyes are watery again, and Dick feels vaguely nauseous about all of this, mostly because it seems like he's connected some dots. Dick gently bats Tim's hands away when it looks like he's about to start frantically signing again. He carefully pins Tim's shoulders to the pillows. "That's not true. You are not bad or wrong or any of those words people called you. You're going to be okay. You don't need to change out of your uniform either. I'll smooth you sleeping in it over with Alfred later. I promise. Please." He breathes a sigh and looks away, not entirely sure what he's asking for. "Just tell me what's wrong." And Dick's eyes are pleading with him. It takes more than a few minutes of Tim staring blankly at the spot where Dick rests his hands on the mattress before he can even think clearly enough to formulate a response. There is really no way out of this situation now. He has to tell Dick, and Dick will of course tell Bruce, and Tim will be discarded by yet another family. It will all be his fault again. Finally, like ripping off a bandage, his hands start their frantic movements again. "My parents found out when I was 5, and put me into therapy right after. It didn't work. I was still a screw-up, and I still couldn't be normal. I couldn't be quiet, or still, or listen like I should have." Tim can feel his face heating up with the shame of it all, as he pointedly keeps his gaze off Dick. He's never admitted to any of this to anyone at all. He never even dared to consider telling anyone before now, but it's virtually unavoidable at this point. "I can't do some things, because sometimes, even if they're stupidly easy, because my brain just gets stuck in this kind of feedback loop that keeps me from being able to move or even make a decision sometimes." Tim swallows hard. Even though he's signing everything, it's almost just as bad as having to speak it. "They call it autism. I know I'm screwed up. I understand if you want me to leave." The hot tears are beginning to slip down Tim's cheeks. Once again, when he chances a quick look at Dick's face, he looks absolutely shattered, and somewhere deep in the lines around his eyebrows, Tim thinks he sees fury. Tim looks away again and begins to sob now. He's ruined everything, and he's going to be forced to leave. That is, if they even let him out in one piece. He might not be that lucky, and everyone will know and will hate him. The force of each shuddering sob racks his body, and it feels so bad. It's just so much all at once, and he can't make heads or tails of any of the emotions coursing through him. Truthfully, he doesn't have the energy to keep fighting his body. His fingers are wrapped in a snarl of his dark hair, and he's biting his lip to try and make it all just stop. Tim's eyes are screwed shut so hard, he can't even make out the lights or shadows around him in the room anymore. It's only once he can taste blood that he has a moment of reprieve. But then there are hands on him again. Stinging, itchy, crawling hands. They're trying to wrap around Tim's wrists, and he's just frozen. He doesn't lash around like last time, nor does he make any effort to force his own hands to let go of their death grip around his hair on the sides of his head. He just sits, fists against his scalp, teeth digging into his lip, the copper on his tongue. The sobs have come to a sudden halt, which somehow makes it that much more difficult to draw in breath. It sounds like Dick is trying to say something, maybe to ask a question, probably something along the lines of, "How could an F-up like you survive this place?" If the voice in the back of his head sounding eerily like his parents is right. But no. Dick is looking at Tim's face so heartbreakingly serious when he finally says, "No, we will never ask you to leave. There's nothing wrong with you, not a damn thing. We all love you. We aren't mad, and we sure as hell won't make you leave. Just, why don't you tell us?" He sounds so much softer at the end, almost unsure he wants to hear the answer. Tim stares at his brother's face, astonished for several long moments. He doesn't look directly in Dick's eyes. He almost never looks directly in anyone's eyes now. But this time, he isn't even trying to fake the eye contact he once upon a time forced himself to make. His gaze flicks from spot to spot, that barely there freckles on Dick's nose, the thin white scar almost but not quite hidden by his hairline, and the residual green and yellow tint from the healing bruise on his cheekbone. Finally, his gaze drops to the blanket covering his lap. "Because I knew it would be different after I told you." He signs with hesitant hands. It was true. It would happen. Things would be different now that Dick and Bruce definitely knew. With his luck, Jason, Damien, Alfred, and Cass would more than likely know by the end of the night, and Duke by the time he left the manor for the day shift would as well. It wasn't really practical to have someone like him as a cape, much less a bat. All his shortcomings would be amplified in the wake of this admission, and they'd see he was never really cut out for this the way they were. He was just a kid who jammed his foot in the door and left no room for rejection. The kid that pretended he could be like everyone else just long enough to make it to somewhere he couldn't fall apart. Years of hiding behind a mask, even when he wasn't wearing a cape. It simultaneously felt like exhaling a breath you didn't know you were holding, and like a punctured lung collapsing under the pressure of an open atmosphere. Gently swaying back and forth, Tim looked up again in time to catch Dick right before he was about to speak. "It will be different. I know it will. I can't do what you all do because I'm wrong." He signs weakly, his teeth finding his raw lip again as the rocking intensifies. Dick's brows furrow, and there's a slight downturn in the edges of his lips. The expression is colder than what Tim had ever seen him wear when not in uniform. And then, like a river breaking its banks, Dick speaks again. "You're right. It won't be the same. But we won't take your cape away. You're still one of us, and if anyone tries, they can go through me. I don't know who's told you you're wrong, but they're the ones who are wrong. They are so, so wrong, baby bird. Dick is breathing slow and even, but Tim still sees the way his chest heaves with the words. The only thing that will change is how we help you. We'll figure out what you need and what we can do, okay? His older brother gently cups either side of his face, but doesn't direct his gaze towards Tim's eyes. Just looks like he's seeing the whole of Tim being all at once. You're not wrong. You are as you were meant to be, and we love you for it. Anyone who tries anything about it will have to go through me, understand? And Tim nods. All the fight has left his body, and his bones feel like rubber beneath the weight of his cement body. He melts into the familiar touch, and Dick just lays down and draws him closer. The lights are already mostly off, but as they finally settle with Tim's head tucked into the crook of Dick's shoulder, and Tim's legs squished by Dick's ridiculously long legs, the last dimmed light flickers off, and the door clicks all the way shut, as the Batman himself stands vigil outside the door. There would be time to figure things out in the morning. Tim would owe an explanation, and would have to think about what this all meant for him now. But that was for the morning. For now, he could drift off knowing his big brother was there to take care of him. This concludes part 1 of The Drive Home Is Long, I Hope I Make It. I hope you guys liked this. I recorded for It Comes in Waves as the Shouts Turn into Whispers like quite a while ago, and I didn't realize somehow at the time that it was part of a series. So now I'm recording the whole series. This is part 1 of it. I think that the It Comes in Waves as the Shouts Turn into Whispers, I think that was like part 4 or part 3, but I'll put it in the description of that one, what part it was, and I'll try to like keep them organized, because it's going to have a different cover art than the other ones in the series, which might make things a little bit confusing, and I'm debating whether I should just like re-release it with the same cover art, just so that it matches and will be in order. I don't know. I'll figure it out, but I hope you guys liked this. I think it's interesting, and I really love autistic Tim Drake. Really, I love any characters being autistic. That's one of my favorite tropes. I think that the author did a really good job in writing him. I forgot to add the content warnings at the beginning of the video. I'll put them in the description. Anyways, I think it was really accurate as somebody who is autistic, though I have never been to ABA therapy, so I don't know if that part was authentic. But the author also says that they have never experienced ABA therapy. But other than that, I really like this, and I like the series a lot, and I hope that you guys like it too. Hopefully the next part of it will be up soon, and as always, thank you so much for listening.